Going on? So, gonna get a little bit dark here, I guess. But my goodness, I sure have been looking at a lot of stuff with stoicism, and it's really incredible. I think it's pretty fascinating that as much as I detest the idea of death and dying of myself, this idea that whoever I am in whatever form, whether it be a soul inside of a vessel that one day dissipates or whatnot, whatever have you. Um, since I don't really know, I don't speak too certain of it either way, and I try not to follow any specific doctrine, but I do study. So, but the idea is, why would somebody who can appreciate the ideals of understanding how death fuels us to move and causes us to act because we understand we have not 1,000 years to do what we need to do, but we have to do whatever it is that we're destined, or we feel that we're destined within a limited time frame. But at the same time, be so, we'll even call it ignorantly, attached to one's life. I'm not too sure. At first, when I was thinking of it growing up, I would always be like, well, if we were born and we weren't really familiar with the time before that, why would we be so concerned about the time after? What is it about our own attachment, or what is it about our nature that causes us to be so attached to this physical form? I couldn't really tell you. There's a lot of things in Stoicism that I follow, and a lot of things that I completely agree with. One of the things that always gets to me is the fact that by natural order, there's this thing that we do called dying, and that any animal ignorant enough not to accept the way the universe is in its true form and cannot accept the way that it works are ignorant to the laws and therefore unjust. But I don't know. The other part of me argues a different story. It argues we come upon this earth, we become great men, we become more and more just every day, we learn from our faults, but then we have this tear in which all the things that we were given get taken away, and all that which we were created into or returned back to that which made us. It's not such an issue from a universal perspective, but here I am, a man with conscious thoughts and an idea of my own mortality. So it's naturally, in my own opinion at least, to start considering, why is it that we take death so much for granted just because it's happened and it seems as if it's one of the natural laws? What if it's that perhaps it's the natural law that we're supposed to live forever in different forms, at least in consciousness? However, because of our current incorrect doctrine, we fall subject to death. So, I don't know. Many people have thought before and sought out immortality, and I understand it was a frivolous adventure because all of them were dead, or perhaps maybe some of them aren't. That's another crazy thing. I really can't prove to you what anyone did in the past because I wasn't there. And I'm very cautious to assume anything that somebody said before in the past. I would imagine that if somebody were immortal and they would walk upon this earth, they wouldn't necessarily have the need to walk within society because their needs would be far different than the rest of ours. Much like somebody with superficial abilities and talents that would be considered supernatural. I don't believe they'd walk on this earth like the rest of us. Now, I'm not suggesting that people have supernormal capabilities and so forth, but whenever people suggest that the capability of the human mind is far beyond what we expect it to be on the surface level, at least, I can't help but wonder that if these people did exist, would they really be known by the rest of us? Would it be that obvious? I would imagine if I was in a situation like that, I wouldn't feel the need to have to come out and address this, because it wouldn't be of any matter. I remember when studying chakras and energy systems back as a kid, they talk about the different layers of ascension, or levels of ascension, and once you get to the point of the crown chakra and accomplish what they would refer to as enlightenment, there is no need for any proof. There's no need for having to demonstrate your power. As a matter of fact, it gets very tricky because from what I understand, once somebody achieves a level of ascension where they're, what do you call it? The third eye chakra? Is that what they refer it to? I don't know. I've heard a bunch of stuff. People always talk about the pineal gland and stuff like that. But once you reach to the point where energy flows up your spine all the way up to the third eye, as it would say, then you start inheriting abilities not typical of this world, and that's where your psychics and other stuff would start coming out of. Well, it's a very dangerous game to be playing around with the ethereal when you're still in a physical form and you hope to achieve ascension, because then you're technically blocking yourself from being able to ascend to that next level. And I know I'm being very vague and just kind of going over a bunch of details, glossing over important facts. This video, I guess, isn't necessarily to just anybody who would be passing by. This would be more for somebody who perhaps already studied around about Buddhist faith, chakras. Well, I guess it wouldn't necessarily be exclusively Buddhist, but a lot of people who've gone down other spiritualistic ideals and so forth. And I don't claim to any of those in particular, but they are good fodder for thought energy, and they do put in a lot of perspective. And I do recall saying this before, but even though I'm not an extremely religious man, I don't consider myself outwardly profane either, but there's never a point where I can discredit anything fully, because the fact of the matter is I don't know. And because I don't know, I have to question. Not so much where I need to have any form of proof, because in some cases it might be just so beyond us that things can't be proved to grant our own satisfaction. However, there is still this need to still search for different forms of meaning. And regardless to some of these constructs, not suggesting in either way that these are legitimate or illegitimate, I have to wonder to myself on whether or not, if there were dimensions of these philosophies that are not true, or that they, over time, have been diluted into something else, as the people who talk about them, whether they understand the truth or not, have possibly dispositioned people into such a nature that they just readily assume all of it to be true. Kind of like how through generations you adapt the doctrine from all of the people prior to you. You assume that the world is round, or I guess in modern chaotic days, again, that it's flat. And when you have enough people harping on these ideals, you have more traction, and it becomes more of a popularity of opinion where people follow that instead of whether or not it is truth. And I mean, I'm really not saying anything significant here, especially anyone who's studied Buddhism, stoicism, and beliefs like the yogis would practice while doing their asanas. These aren't really extreme thought processes. These are just things I've accumulated, perhaps incorrectly, even over time. But one thing that always sticks out to me is whether or not there's actually a need to die. Sure, it makes sense that it's part of natural order, and maybe I'm not as great as the animals who accept death readily. I could still appreciate the fact that time is limited and allow it to inspire me, but as I become a better man every day, I don't necessarily think that by ceasing my existence is going to be the appropriate finish to a life well lived. I mean, perhaps I'm overly attached with this physical body. Well, so be it. That's just my nature of my character right now. But regardless to that, have we been just assuming death is part of a natural order because it's been indoctrinated inside of our society from cause and effect relationships over years and years? We see people die, we understand that it happens, or perhaps even something more prolific happens, but we only witness the physical manifestation of it. In any case, I highly question whether or not we need to die, and whether or not a good portion of the reason why we haven't figured out true immortality, biological immortality, is because we've conditioned ourselves to already readily accept death as it is. But I don't think that's the answer. I know this is extremely different from all my other videos, and sorry for the change of pace if it's a little bit startling in a way. Well, I don't know if startling would be a word to describe it per se, but nonetheless, I've only got a limited time right here. And even though this is an early stake and claim in my present, it does loom over me constantly. And I can't help but wonder what kind of contribution I can create to prevent it. But then again, that's just me talking crazy, right? So, fuck it. Alright guys, take care.